Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that a Congressional Research Service report called the Nuclear Triad NC3 Modernization by Alex Neenan be included in the record. I want to recognize Ms. Neenan and her team for conducting a cross-cut analysis of the funding and contracts associated with the major nuclear delivery systems, including NC3. This has been a hugely helpful report to myself and Senator Fisher on the Strategic Forces Subcommittee.
Without objections to order.
Thank you. First, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to talk about a little bit of the context of what's going on here. We're trying to do a very difficult and expensive thing at once, which is to entirely modernize the nuclear triad and NC3. And by the way, I consider it a quad because I think NC3 is an essential part of the triad, and rebuild the infrastructure of the entire nuclear enterprise all at once. I call it the pig and the python of the budget. It's a major expenditure that probably should have been done over the past 40 years in increments, but we're doing it all at once. So I think that's a problem that we need to understand here in the context of the budget. Do I articulate it accurately, Administrator Rubin?
You do.
Well, I think that's something that we really need to think about. I want to talk a minute about the cloud. And by the way, the first person to download data from the cloud onto a tablet was Moses. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Everybody's moving to the cloud, private enterprise and government entities, intelligence agencies, Defense Department, everybody's moving to the cloud. The advantage, obviously, is a large repository which we can adequately protect. The disadvantage is there's so much data there that if somebody can get in it, they've really hit the jackpot. So, Madam Secretary, I hope that as we're working in this direction, that due consideration is given to the cyber risks of cloud storage of data.
Absolutely. It's one of the top priorities of our Office of Cyber, CSER.
CSER.
Yes, to be able to make sure the cloud as well as the hard infrastructure associated with our energy, grid, et cetera, are protected.
Well, I'm not sure who actually has the specific responsibility, but I hope that you'll have CSER pay special attention to this because I see it as I say, the cloud is definitely more secure only if it's adequately protected, and if it isn't, then it could be a catastrophe.
Agree 100%.
Workforce. Senator Shaheen asked you about workforce. I understand in the budget that there are raises for the nuclear enterprise workforce. Administrator Ruby, is that important? I mean, if all jobs are important, but the work that you're doing is critical to national security, and we've just got to have the right people.
Yeah, thank you, Senator King. It is extremely important in the nuclear security enterprise to have the best workforce, and we have to compete with the tech industry and the private sector. And
Are you doing it? Are you getting people?
We are. We had a couple of tough years that at the moment we seem to have turned the corner on that. We took some aggressive actions. We actually authorized a mid-year salary adjustment at our labs, plants, and sites that was targeted towards the places where we were seeing the highest attrition.
Well, cutting attrition is as good as recruiting. Every person that doesn't leave
Absolutely.
is one you don't have to fill. And I gather you have significantly cut your attrition rate.
We have, at this point, and we're going to watch it closely, but at this point, our attrition has returned to close to normal levels at our labs, plants, and sites, which is around 3%. I will say that we're still experiencing a high attrition in our federal workforce. Actually, the highest attrition in over a decade. It's around 12%, and we're now need to really focus on what we can do about that.
Well,
Our mission helps a lot. So we'll never pay what the private sector pays and sort of the full package, but there are This mission is important and people recognize it.
Well, I think the mission is important, and for that reason, you can hold people to some extent, but you also have to be sure that we fill those critical positions. I understand that Senator Fisher talked about budget and pit production, so I'm not going to replow that ground, but I think clearly this committee is very concerned about meeting that 80 pits per year schedule, and you have to come to us and tell us how we can help, how we can, whether it's Defense Production Act or what are the elements that are needed in order to meet that critical need. Because as the chairman indicated at the beginning of the hearing, we're facing an entirely new strategic situation with two highly nuclear armed potential rivals. So let us know how we can help you to meet that schedule.
Thank you. We really appreciate your full support on this, and the things that you have done to date have been very useful, including funding our pipeline programs. So, I mean, a lot of this is about people, and we have to increase the number of people who can do these jobs in the United States. So we can't do that overnight, but the funding of our trade and crafts programs, our university programs, along with pay, transportation, and housing incentives for craft workers, all of those things are helping us, and pre-buying equipment. So we appreciate your support, and we'll continue to look for ways that we can accelerate.
Thank you. Thanks to both of you. Thanks for your service.
Thank you.